All right. Hello, guys. How's everything going? Um, Surprise, I had a baby. Pretty strange. But yeah, here we are. So I guess I should show you what he looks like. We named him Jack. Look at him. He's awesome. Really, really, really good baby so far. Just cute as a button. And yeah, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Like I said before, I hope you guys are hanging in there. If you ever have questions about anything, please feel free to email me and let me know what's up. Okay, well, we're going to skip this wake up. Part of the reason I'm making this video for you is for some of the harder concepts that's difficult for you guys to walk through on your own. I will do my best at explaining it for you. You'll see oftentimes that I'll put links to tutorials that you guys can watch online as well, and that would help. Now, these are kind of boring because you can't see my face. It'd be kind of neat if you could see me bloop right up there, so you just got to kind of bear with me on that one. Second warning about these videos is that I can't really edit them, so if I screw up or if something happens, I'm just going to keep rolling because of time. And then the third thing is it's going to be hard for me to gauge what you guys are writing down on your notes. So if I go a little fast, I apologize. These are on the wiki. You can pause them if you're watching them as a class. If it's individually, obviously, you know what to do. Okay? All right, so you guys have already walked through photosynthesis. Hopefully that went okay for you guys. Those were older videos from my other maternity leave. I edited these notes, so this is why you're getting a new, fresh one. All right, so today we're going to talk about cell respiration, specifically anaerobic respiration, okay? So what is the purpose of cell respiration? We kind of really briefly talked about this back in the cell unit when we were discussing mitochondria. So the whole point of cell respiration is to take the glucose that was made in photosynthesis and break it down into ATP. What you guys are going to find in these next few days is how both of these processes rely on each other hand in hand. We rely on plants for our glucose source. Even if you're eating a hamburger, you're eating the cow that ate the plant, okay? So that's what's really pretty cool about it, is we are completely dependent on them. So purpose of cell respiration is glucose is going to be broken down into ATP, which hopefully you guys recall is the usable form of energy, okay? All right, so if we were to do the summative equation for cell respiration, you're going to find that it's actually opposite of photosynthesis. So glucose and oxygen is what we are going to need for this process. If you guys recall in photosynthesis, that's what we made, all right? And what we're going to make is carbon dioxide, water, which were the reactants for photosynthesis, and we're going to make ATP. Now you can think that ATP is kind of like the sunlight energy. If you notice, it's down here and not shooting in on that arrow, but basically kind of the same idea. So basically they're the reverse of each other. You're going to be doing a gizmo tomorrow. Yes, another gizmo. I apologize that you keep doing those, but they're actually phenomenal labs that give you a good concept of what's happening. And actually, guys, a lot of this stuff will be on the computer. There will be some other labs that are a little bit easier to do, but a lot of them will be interactive, okay? So anyway, reactants products, okay? I don't know why I have photosynthesis up there. That's incorrect. But if we were to do it at the formula, these are all your formulas right up there, okay? You need to know both of those. On the test that you guys are going to have your next one, I will be asking you to give me one of the formulas. You don't know which one I'm going to ask for. It can either be photosynthesis or cell respiration. And by the way, your cell test, I'm picking them up tomorrow. Those should be graded and in the grade book as soon as possible, in addition to a lot of the other stuff that you guys have turned in. Okay, moving along. So we talked about cell respiration as the process in which we make ATP. So what exactly is ATP? Okay, and like I said before, we talked about this back in the biochem unit. It's a nucleic acid. So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. I'm never ever going to ask you that specifically to spell this out. Anytime I give you an acronym up here, I like to let you know what it stands for. Probably the biggest thing that's important here is this triphosphate. Okay, that's the big part, and hopefully you guys know that tri represents 3, and phosphate is just basically a chemical structure. Okay, so what is the structure of it? It's going to contain these 3 things. Okay, so it's going to contain a structure known as adenosine. Adenosine, let's back up. If you recall, with the nucleic acids, they're going to have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and phosphorus. Well, this adenosine is where the nitrogens are going to be found. It's this orange bit right here. You see those ends all over the place. Your CHs, carbons and hydrogens, even though they're in this adenosine as well. This is our sugar. Okay, so it's going to have a little bit of a carbohydrate in there as well. And then right here are the phosphates. Now, once you guys write this down, if you can put a square or underline the 3 phosphates, that's the big thing there. Okay, that's where all the energy is. Now, I could talk for hours on how ATP works, how does it hold energy, how does it do all that, but we're not going to dive into that, okay? I'm just kind of giving you a brief exposure saying, hey, yo, it's the usable form of energy. Anytime you eat food, we got to convert it into this, okay, in order to do anything with it, all right? And then we'll kind of go from there. If you ever want to talk about it, Lord, email me. I got you, okay? All right, so let's kind of back up again as far as the function of ATP. It is going to be the usable form of energy, okay? So ATP, again, is the usable form of energy. And this was just a review back from your biochem unit, okay? All right. So let's talk a little bit about the process of the hour, and this is called glycolysis. Now, what we're featuring today, guys, I know you have glycolysis up there in your notes. If you could, off to the side, somewhere around that word, write down anaerobic respiration. Ooh, how do you spell that? Anaerobic, A-N-A-E-R-O-B-I-C. One more time, somewhere near glycolysis, write down A-N-A-E-R-O-B-I-C. And we're going to talk about that here in a bit. But everything here is considered to be a form of anaerobic, okay? And that'll come up soon, all right? So in glycolysis, what are the organisms that are going to be undergoing this process? What's cool about it is that it's every single living thing in the whole wide world. So we are undergoing this process. The plants in the room, yes, plants undergo this process as well, are going to be undergoing that. Bacteria will be doing this. Everything, okay, is undergoing this process. The snails that you see up in my tank, okay? So every single living thing. All right, now, because every single living thing undergoes this process, what you're going to find as I'm explaining this to you is that I'm going to break it down into 2 big categories for these next 2 days. We're going to have a category known as complex organisms and one known as simple organisms, okay? Now, I think you have complex versus simple in your notes right there. So if you guys could draw an arrow down from simple and just simply put down that simple organisms, we're going to be talking about bacteria and yeast. Those are the only 2 things that we're considering to be simple, okay? Now, yeast is actually going to be a fungus, believe it or not, and we use yeast to make bread and beer and alcohol and things like that, okay? So bacteria and yeast are going to be our simple organisms. Complex organisms are basically everything else. And I know that seems kind of silly that I'm saying that and very oversimplified, but that's essentially what we're doing here. So if you are not a bacteria or yeast organism, we, for these notes, are going to consider to be complex as far as what process you'll go through with that, okay? So simple versus complex. So hopefully that kind of clears that one up, all right? At any point in time, if you need a break, just hit pause and stretch, okay? Please, because I'm just going to keep rambling, okay? All right, moving on. So where does glycolysis take place? Now, what we're going to do here is that we are going to talk about glycolysis occurring in complex organisms. So again, this is every single living thing but bacteria and yeast. So we're going to feature the big boys. Well, not even all big boys, but how about anything but bacteria and yeast, okay? Now, where does it take place in these guys? It's going to be taking place in the cytoplasm, and hopefully you guys recall that the cytoplasm is the fluid inside of the cell, okay? Gush, 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 all that fluid. All right. Now, you guys have this elephant. I decided to feature a lovely elephant for you just because. And let's walk through the process, okay? So what I want you guys to do with the elephant, if you guys could, is draw what I have right here, okay? And draw an arrow going into that elephant. And if you're feeling crazy, you can put a number 1 by here, just so you know that that's the first step. Okay, and if I were there, I would be like, tell me what's happening, okay? But it's not that fun without me being there pushing you guys along. This video, I know it's going to be rough to watch. So what this is showing you right here is glucose is food, okay? So what I'm showing you is that the elephant is eating, all right? Not in a very lovely way. Now, if you pay attention to what I did right here, the formula for glucose is C6H12O6, okay? You need to know that one. But what we're most concerned with here is this guy right here. So please make sure that you draw that out. Basically, it's the carbon backbone, okay? It's the backbone of that structure, and that's all we really care about. H's and O's are involved, but, you know, we don't really care so much about them, all right? We care about the carbons, and that's what we're going to track, okay? So it has 6 carbons, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's how we're going to show glucose, okay? Now, so beside number 1 right up there, you can find number 1 in your notes. Let's write this beside right there. Good, nice, Miss Chris. Consumers consume. That's good. All right, so consumers are basically going to consume glucose through eating, okay? So an elephant eats some grass. You guys ate a Bojangles biscuit, all right? Producers are actually going to be breaking down the glucose that they make as well. It'd be pretty silly if you made glucose and you just let it sit there, right? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They need energy from it as well. So that's kind of a huge misconception with cell respiration, is that photosynthesis occurs in plants and cell respiration occurs in animals, okay? Not the case, all right? So it's going to happen in both of them, okay? All right, so let's move on to the second one, all right? So here I'm going to do something to this glucose. I'm going to go, wha-sha. Okay, let me try it again. Wha-cha. My daughter would appreciate that. She's loving some Kung Fu Panda lately, and she'll actually go, wah, and move her hands like karate motion. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm sleeping. All right, so you guys had a number 1 right here. Let's put a number 2 by this one right up here, okay? So what did I do to this? If you guys are just looking at the C's right here, forget about that crazy word that I have right there. And by the way, that stands for pyruvate. I went from here to here. What did I do? I basically just cut it in half, okay? So for number 2, glucose is going to be broken into 2 3-carbon pieces called pyruvate, all right? Now, when I say that it's broken down, a lot of people are like, well, how does that happen? It's basically digestion, guys, right? You eat food, you shove the glucose inside of your cells, and your cells goes to town, all right? They're karate chopping that thing left and right, all right? Now, note here, I'm just having it in the big body of the elephant. This is happening on a cellular level, okay? It just doesn't look as pretty if I put it inside of a cell. It's way cooler inside of an elephant, okay? So this is the first step of basically breaking down this glucose for energy. I took this sucker and said, wha-cha, chopped it in half and had my pyruvate, okay? So first step, second step, very simple, okay? All right, third step is I want you guys to write ATP inside of there, and I'm just having you write 1. There actually are set amounts of ATPs that are produced, but we aren't going to get into those numbers because you don't really need to know it, okay? This process is insane. All right, so we're going to keep it fairly simple. Now, what I want you guys to put down here is, if you recall, in photosynthesis, basically, we took energy from the sun and we made this fabulous structure known as glucose. So it's jam-packed full of energy, ultimately from the sun. So if you guys think about it, we get our energy from the sun in a weird way, indirectly, I guess you can say. All right, so anytime you're going to see me chopping up this glucose right here, that is actually going to be releasing energy, which our body can use and transfer into ATP. Now, there's a big process going from pyruvate to ATP. We're not getting into that, okay? All you need to know is that anytime I break apart glucose, wapa, I get energy, okay? Imagine it as like breaking a stick and it's a loud, crack. That's a release of energy. Bad analogy, but we're going with it, okay? So for number 3, and you guys can put a 3 beside this ATP if you would like. Dunk, 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 3 right there. So the energy stored in glucose, which is ultimately from the sun, is released and makes ATP. All right. Now, guys, that's it for glycolysis in complex organisms. 3 steps. You eat, you break it in half, you make some energy, okay? I bet you guys would like it if you could learn it that way. All right, very simple, okay? All right, so let's go over reactants and products. You notice I did that with photosynthesis. Reactants are what we need, and what I told you in those other videos is what's going in is what we need. So the reactant that we need for glycolysis is just plain and simple glucose. That's it, okay? If we didn't have glucose, this process wouldn't happen, all right? For the products, basically, what do we make? We're going to make 2 things, okay? And they're hanging out in here. The 2 products that we make are actually going to be pyruvate and ATP. We're making both of them. So pyruvate and ATP are going to be my 2 products. Okay, pyruvate and ATP. Okay, so the result, what's happening here? So this is taking place inside of us. So basically, we've got glucose into these 2 things. What are we going to go from here? Now, this is where complex is going to kind of go off on its own, okay? Whoa, look at all that right there, all right? So we are powered by tons of ATP, and how you guys can think of that is anytime you eat anything, there are countless molecules of glucose inside of those things, and this is happening to every single one of those structures. Now, 1 ATP, even though we're eating a lot of glucose, is not enough to basically fuel us. We need a lot more than that, okay? So the ATP that we made in glycolysis is not enough, all right? So what we're going to do here is that we're going to take this pyruvate and your body's going to send it to the mitochondria, which hopefully you guys recall from the cell unit. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. It is going to be the structure that's going to be making the ATP, all right, which is pretty important. What we refer to this process as that we call aerobic respiration. Now notice I said earlier anaerobic respiration, which is going to come up again. Aerobic is what we're going to talk about tomorrow, okay? So this ATP, this measly ATP that we made here by just karate chopping glucose in half, not enough. We need more. So the body says, see you later, peace out to the mitochondria, and the mitochondria can do its thing, okay? All right, review of the mitochondria. I can't remember if this is in your notes, but this is from your cell unit. It's going to break down sugar into ATP, and if I were to really get technical with you in the cell unit, I would have said break down pyruvate into ATP, but you guys would have had no idea what I was talking about, okay? All right, and aerobic respiration is basically respiration that occurs with oxygen. We're going to get to that later on, okay? So all that is complex organisms, all right? So that is every single creature in the world with the exception of bacteria and yeast. So let's talk a little bit about what happens with those simple guys, okay? And this is kind of the process of the hour, and you guys have actually experienced a lot of these things before. And again, if you guys need a break at any point in time, just hit pause and wait, or if you're powering through, power through, okay? All right, now you're going to see a lot of similarities here, okay? So glycolysis, simple organisms. Again, we're talking about bacteria and yeast, and if you guys recognize this little guy down here, this is a prokaryotic bacterial cell, okay? The nucleoid, pili, ribosomes, I won't get into all of it, okay? All right, we're going to start off the exact same. So if you guys could, why don't you take this part right here, our glucose, and have it drawn into that bacteria cell. Yes, bacteria actually eat. And when we get to our bacteria unit, way on down the way, you're going to learn about how they actually do that. Okay, so if you ever had a bacterial infection, they're actually consuming you, which is really kind of a gross thing if you think about it. Okay, so put a number 1 right here. It's actually going to be very similar to what you guys just wrote down. Now, if you guys want to, for this one, you can say same as what I wrote down earlier. I don't really care. But this is the exact same thing as what you guys just wrote down for the complex organisms, okay? Me, I would have wrote it down just because I like to write, okay? And actually, bacteria can be photosynthetic as well, all right? So this is why I kept that part right there. So bacteria can be consumers and photosynthetic, okay? All right, so the same thing here. We're going to karate chop those things. Hi-yah! Okay, chop it in half. We got our pyruvate. Okay, again, very similar to us. So the first step, they eat or consume, or they have it through photosynthesis. They break it in half to pyruvate. Okay, so that's the same as well. All right, and actually this next step is going to be the same too. They're going to make ATP. All right, so inside of your bacteria cell, let's put pyruvate and ATP. So again, we have 1, 2, 3, which is exactly the same thing that happened in us, okay? The exact same thing. Now the difference here is where do we go from here, okay? Where do we go from here? All right, reactants are the same. We basically are going to have glucose, all right, exactly the same. And the products are going to be exactly the same as well. It's going to be pyruvate and ATP, okay? So yeah, I had you guys write all that down again, but you could have summarized or said, see the front, okay? All right, the result is where we're different. So who do you think needs more energy, a complex organism or a tiny little bacteria cell? I totally asked that in a very pushy way, or not pushy, but guiding way. They don't need as much energy as we do, and thank goodness, right? They're microscopic, they're itty-bitty. I can't imagine if they had more energy what they actually would do. They'd rule the world, all right? So the result. The ATP that is made in glycolysis here is actually enough for them, all right? They're plenty, they're full up, they don't need any more, okay? So what do you do with things that you don't need anymore? You get rid of it, right? You throw it away. And this is what they're going to do with that pyruvate. This bacteria cell says, you know what? I got plenty of energy right here. I don't need this. See you later, all right? So what we're going to do, or what they're going to do with that pyruvate, is they're going to break it down basically through fermentation. Okay, now all of this is anaerobic respiration, but fermentation is basically, did I give you that definition? I did. Okay, sorry, just checking. All right, fermentation, I'm going to give you the definition, is basically breaking down pyruvate into waste. Okay, and I think you guys probably have heard of fermentation before. All right, because it's a very common process that we use pretty much every day. Okay, especially if you have a baker in the house. All right. So ATP made is enough energy, pyruvate is broken down, and fermentation. Okay, and that process is anaerobic respiration. Now, glycolysis is anaerobic. So what does anaerobic mean? Basically, it occurs without oxygen present. So what that basically means is that you don't need to have oxygen around for this process to take place. And you're going to see why. When we talk about aerobic respiration tomorrow, you're going to see that that is a big key player in that process. Okay, so anaerobic, don't need it. All right, not important. Okay. All right, so what is fermentation? Let's make sure that we get this definition down. It's basically breaking down pyruvate into trash or to waste, okay? So I like this picture right here. It's kind of silly. You see it going in, break it in half, ATP, and then going right to the trash, okay? So it's a waste product, all right? We wouldn't dream of doing that as a complex organism because we wouldn't survive. Although we actually do go through fermentation when there's not oxygen present, okay? Who knew that? All right. So we have two basic types of fermentation, okay? Two basic types. The very first one is something known as lactic acid fermentation, okay? I doubt that you guys have ever heard it like that before, all right? Lactic acid fermentation. Now, if you guys look at this picture right here, I love it. You got glucose being broken down into pyruvate, and then it's broken down into these two things right here. So these guys are basically two bacteria cells that are undergoing lactic acid fermentation. And actually, if you like soy sauce, which I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that love soy sauce, I know I do, it's made through fermentation. And actually some cheese that you make is, and yogurt, which we're going to talk a little bit more about, is made through lactic acid fermentation. Okay, so the organisms that are going to be undergoing this, the main key player here is going to be bacteria, okay? Now, if you guys notice, I put humans up here. That's not the ideal situation, okay? We don't really want to be going through this process, but sometimes it happens. But bacteria is the host boss of it all, okay? So those are the organisms that are going to be doing it. Now, a brief summary, okay, of what's happening here is the pyruvate is broken down into lactic acid, okay? Kind of a very simplistic way of saying it. So pyruvate is broken down into lactic acid, which is a waste product, okay? And I'm going to give you kind of an example that you can relate to, hopefully, okay, to have it make a little bit more sense to you. All right, so pyruvate is broken down in lactic acid. All right, so let me give you an example. For example, you can just simply put down yogurt, okay? You don't have to write down all this stuff. This is just me explaining what's happening with that. If you have ever, well, how about next time you eat yogurt, why don't you guys read the container? And if you look on the back, what you'll see is a description that looks a lot like this. They'll say that it contains live cultures. This particular one only has one culture. You can get yogurts now that have, goodness gracious, like 10 different bacteria cultures in it. And a lot of people are like, oh God, I don't want to eat bacteria. It's actually very, very, very good for you. Okay, so what does this have to do with lactic acid fermentation? Making yogurt's actually pretty easy, and it's a lab that I typically do with my students, but because I'm not there, I'm not going to do it. Don't get excited. You don't eat the yogurt. We just smell, which is a pretty scary thing, because if it doesn't work, it smells like rotten milk, but if it does work, it smells like yogurt. But anyway, so bacteria is inside, whenever you eat yogurt, it has sugar inside of it. And the bacteria are actually consuming the sugar, breaking it down into pyruvate, and then breaking that pyruvate down into lactic acid. If you ever notice when you eat yogurt, sometimes it's kind of bitter or tangy, right? And that's the acid that you're tasting inside of there, okay? And it's perfectly healthy. It's actually very, 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 very good for you, okay? You guys should Google, if you're interested in making yogurt, you should Google it, and you can actually do it at home. It's it's pretty easy, okay? All right. In humans, where we get lactic acid is as a result of sore muscles. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tomorrow. Hopefully everybody in class has had a sore muscle. If you have not, you need to get out and play a little bit more. But that is an example of lactic acid inside of us. It's cell respiration gone bad. All right. The next one that we have here is alcohol fermentation, which you guys should know nothing about with the exception of bread. Okay, so again, we have glucose being broken down into pyruvate, and then we can have beer, wine, and bread as a result of that. Okay, beer, wine, and bread. Okay, The organisms that are going to be undergoing this, yeast are going to be the big key players in this one, okay? If you guys have a baker in your family, you have definitely experienced this. And again, yeast is actually a type of fungus, all right? So yeast are going to be doing this process, all right? Let's talk a little bit about what is happening here. A brief summary. That pyruvate that was created in glycolysis is actually going to be broken down into ethanol, which is an alcohol, okay, and carbon dioxide. All right, so it's going to be broken down into ethanol and carbon dioxide. All right, I know I'm talking fast. I'm sorry. All right, so how exactly does this work? Okay, so to give you a little bit of an example, let's talk about baking bread, okay? And really for the example, you guys can just simply put down baking bread, all right? That's the big one. So my little summary that I have right here, if you were to look at the key ingredients for baking bread, basically all that you need is yeast, sugar, flour, and I think you add a little bit of water in there, okay? So when you mix all those ingredients together, you get this nice little dough ball. And if you have bakers in your life, what do they do with that dough ball? Typically, they shove them off to the side and they let them sit. Okay. What I want you guys to do, if you're watching this as a class, you can click this loaf of bread right here, and actually you'll get a video that'll show you what happens with that dough ball. I don't like clicking on the videos on these because YouTube gets mad at me about it, and sometimes I can't show the video. So you guys can click on it and watch it. But basically, when you mix all those ingredients together, the yeast basically starts undergoing this process right here. The yeast says, hey, yo, there's that sugar you put in there, okay? I'm going to break that down into pyruvate. Sweet, I don't need that pyruvate anymore, so I'm going to get rid of it as waste. And the waste products are actually going to be carbon dioxide, which causes that yeast dough ball to actually get larger, okay? They call rising. And alcohol is actually going to be produced as well. If you ever smell dough, it actually kind of smells like alcohol. All right. So then I have kids ask me, well, then why don't I get drunk when I eat bread? Okay. I don't know why you would even ask a teacher that. Because when you bake it, the alcohol actually evaporates. All right. And obviously the yeast is no longer alive. All right. It's really pretty cool. My husband is an excellent baker, and he's baked all sorts of stuff from pita to, well, I don't know, all sorts of stuff. And he still always gets excited when he sees his dough ball rise. He gets excited about the science behind it. And if you've never done it, you should try it. It's pretty cool. Okay. The other one here is alcohol fermentation. Again, not going to get into much of that one, but it's basically going to be around about the same thing. Okay. Yeah. So this right here is a very silly video. Basically, I usually call it the drunk monkey video, which is very inappropriate. But you guys should watch it because it's hilarious. It's an old video, but it's still good. Basically what happens is that there is a tree that has a bunch of fruit on it, and the fruit fall down, and basically they start to decompose and rot. And when they're rotting, they actually start undergoing alcohol fermentation with some of the bacteria and yeast that are inside of there. And what it actually ends up doing is that it ends up creating alcohol inside of this fruit. If you've ever smelled an orange or something that's been sitting around for a long time, that's starting to rot, it actually smells like alcohol. So these animals come along and they start gorging themselves on them, and basically they get drunk in a sense. They're very inappropriate, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting, okay, in a weird way. All right, so that's it for that, okay? Hopefully some of that made sense to you guys. Look at all this stuff I have up here. All right, so what I want to show you right now is that, what am I doing? Is you guys are about to get in touch with your artistic side, okay? And what you're going to create is actually a diagram representing cell respiration, all right? So you guys should be getting this sheet here in a second, and I'm going to kind of walk through what needs to happen with it. Basically today, you guys are going to do 1 through 4, okay, on a white piece of paper. The white piece of paper is, and I should say that where that is. You'll get a piece, all right? You need markers and color pencils, so color is necessary for this one. You guys can use the pink and the blue boxes that are over by that brown cabinet by the pencil sharpener where you turn things in, okay? So very simple, top of the paper summative equation. You got that one. You're going to pick a header trough, so any type of consumer. And what I would recommend for you guys to do for that consumer is come in here to Google and let's say I wanted to do a sloth, okay? And go to an image search. Now, these guys, as adorable as they are actually, oh my goodness, look at that guy. That's so cute. Are really hard to draw, okay? So what I would do if I were you guys is I would do clip art, okay, after anything that you put in there. So if you do the clip art, these are a whole lot easier. I mean, I can even do a kangaroo. Look how I spelled kangaroo. That's nice, Miss Chris. Okay. Pretty much anything, okay, that you would like. Nobody can do an elephant, though. The elephant has been taken, okay? So you're going to draw that big boy right there, okay? Try to have it take up the majority of the paper, okay? I said 1 through 4. So you're going to do 1, 2. Do not do number 3 because we haven't talked about the mitochondria yet. So we're going to add that a little bit later on, okay? And you're going to hop on down to 4, all right? So basically what you guys are going to do is what I had going into the elephant, like the glucose going in and pyruvate and ATP, you're going to put that into your diagram, okay? That's it. So basically it's just putting your notes into your picture, all right? The thing that's going to be a little bit tricky is the second part. So label, when I say do the label, that's the 6 C's going in, the pyruvate inside, and the ATP. Those are labels, okay? When I have explain, I say use your own words. It's going to be very easy to copy your notes, okay? I don't want that, all right? So please, please, please make sure that you put it into your own words. How would I know? Well, because I wrote those notes, okay? They're in my words. I can recognize my words and how I talk. So summarize it. And actually, you could probably do it in a sentence. It's that simple, okay? Just make sure, again, that you're using your words and don't leave out any details, okay? We are going to be adding the notes tomorrow in here, okay? And this diagram is going to be a hot mess at the end. But again, it's you guys putting it in a diagram and going through it again, okay? I think that's all that I need to say. If you have any questions, email me, okay? Talk to each other. I hear that you guys have been amazing, which is, I'm not surprised. Very sad to leave you guys. Very fun classes. But I hope all is well, and I'm going to make another video for you for tomorrow, and we'll finish up cell respiration, okay? Take care, and I will see you guys later.